This episode's made possible by Planful.
Hi, it's Betsy Ward. I'm the CFO of MassMutual, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 956.
Other thing that I'm also trying to foster, organizationally is having the team to think about timely and relevant insights instead of waiting for perfect information. Just have more timely information and inform that for decision making, and just reiterate from there. We don't need to wait till 100% perfect when the timing is no longer relevant for us.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Z Lee, CFO of Customer.io. When Z Lee entered the world of investment banking in 2008, many of his future CFO peers were making a hasty departure from the banking realm. Lee would be part of the smallest incoming class Credit Suisse ever had, as gloomy headlines continued to fill business pages during the economic downturn's most tumultuous year. On today's episode, we'll hear about Lee's investment banking door of entry, as well as his pivot industry, where he found his footing along the CFO path. We'll begin after this.
Hi, I'm Rowan Tonkin, Chief Marketing Officer at Planful, and we're a proud sponsor of CFO Thought Leader. At Planful, we're empowering teams just like yours to drive peak financial performance in every corner of your business. What sets Planful apart? We have purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. This means we can get you up and running within weeks, and it requires minimal IT involvement. So you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business in your key financial processes. Best of all, you can't outgrow us. We take the pain of growing away with an unmatched ability to scale with you. You have an endless runway with Planful. See why over 1,300 customers around the world choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com and see how you can make financial performance a team sport in your business.
Hello, we're speaking with Z Lee, CFO of Customer.io. Z, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, as always, we're going to begin by asking you to look back, C, and we're curious as to what were those experiences you feel prepared you for this role? What come to mind?
Yeah. It's hard to believe that it's almost 20 years in the finance field. So when I look back, there's probably three different experiences that kind of gave me different distinctive skills. The first one was my operational finance experience. When I first came out of school, I was at a large telco in Canada. So I was working out of Toronto for this company called Bell Canada. So for the US folks, it's kind of like the Verizon or AT&T in the US. So I was in the wireless division. And at the time, it was actually the growth engine for the company because we're talking about late 90s, early 2000s. There's a massive migration for the industry from landline going to wireless. So being in the entry level kind of operation finance team, on the wireless unit, gave me really good insight to really appreciate how the sheer scale of a large enterprise operations. Because Bell, some of the telecom peers here in the US, they have traditional landline, they have video on demand business, they have the wireless unit, they also have satellite that they do services and launch into space. They have a media unit that owns radio, TV stations, and all that, and sports. And they also have a network of retail stores and service fleets. So at Bell, I was able to see a lot of those. Gave me exposure to see, typical beyond just the typical budgeting and reporting, but get exposure to looking at commission negotiations with large retailers, or looking at unit economics of a logistics distribution center, out in Mississauga in Ontario, and then the basics of a subscription business that I still use today in the SaaS space. It's just the old school, subscriber with the wireless units. So that's super helpful for me. So that was the first one, and then the second maybe category was more around my experience in investment banking. So I spent about 6 years in the tech group at Credit Suisse in New York. Um, and very probably typical for people with my background. You work 90 to 100 hours a week, at the time regularly. But I actually really enjoyed the work. Got to work with very smart and hardworking people on a wide range of transactions, including cross-border M&A, a lot of debt deals, IPO, even a couple of the takeover defense engagements, which is really fun. And then the exposure to senior executives in different industries. I was able to do some even like reach outs on my own, like doing cold calling to founders and business that are interesting to me. So I actually enjoy doing that, interacting with founders, which I'll talk more about later too. Like that's something that I really enjoy. But the experience to that, another thing to call out was beyond the financial modeling and presentations and travels with banking. It actually really prepared me to be very good at managing the process. So make sure that you're pushing, the milestones, making sure things are done. We call it, make sure the trains are always on time. So that was a typical critical skill that I acquired during.
Can you get more specific with us? As you say milestones, they might be so familiar with you, but what exactly are their deadlines? What are they exactly?
Yeah. So on a typical engagement, if you're looking at like a M&A deal, there are timelines for when do you start the prep, and then with the preparation, going through the data, and then preparing the management team for presentation with the buyers. And then there is usually also a timeline around first round, a second round, discussions with buyers or bid process. And then you go into more of the closing, the confirmatory diligence. And then everything has pretty much time boxed to it. And a lot of detail and work will go into it to make sure the process runs smoothly. But a lot of times when at the beginning, I was very focused on making sure everything is perfect, which is really required as part of the job too. But where you start to really appreciate the value is that in addition to making sure the information is perfect, you need to move the process and make sure, hey, like now we need to get the buyers. Now we need to get these things ready. So you got to make sure the process is managed tightly and make sure things are like progressing while still juggling all these things in the air. And also we have multiple deals going on too. So it's definitely, a very accelerated process of learning.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it would seem like the senior partners or senior people who are involved in the deal, as you go from one to another, it might change how the trains move. You have to have your wits about you to understand how to prioritize a little differently for this partner versus that one. Or no, is that really not what you were getting at?
Yeah, great question. So it's you hit it right on because we were staffed on different deals. So even though as you get more senior in the bank, you then kind of develop the vertical or industry expertise. But even within that vertical, there are different senior partners. Sometimes you also work with, like I was in the tech group, but we also work with M&A group, or we work with the tech services group or other groups together. So you're dealing with a lot of different deals and also personalities on the internal, in the bank, and also externally with different executives. They also have different styles with the founders or senior executives. So being able to first kind of recognize what are some of the timeframes for different kind of engagements, and then the art comes into place to figure out how to prioritize. How do you juggle between this deal versus that deal? and how do you allocate resources between my my analysts or our VP or our senior bankers. How do we kind of like cover the workflow? So there's definitely a lot of work art involved in there. The more you get to see the process, but step one is still kind of learn the trade, right? Like understand the skill sets involved and also understand some of the typical timelines and some of the key milestones.
Yeah, excellent. Part of what I wanted to draw that out for is, versus someone who's coming up the ranks internally in a finance function, this set of skills is not this is really what you receive in investment banking. So many moving pieces, and you have to be sensitive to all the different challenges that the individuals involved face from the senior people on down. Anyway, I thought that illustrated it nicely. Please continue.
Yeah, sure. So then I'll go through more about the career pivot. So, but after banking, I would say the third experience category is more around like being able to navigate through uncertainty in a fast-paced, private company, fast-paced, growing environment. So that ability is a critical skills that I'm still kind of like learning, but I really enjoy that process to really come into a new environment and then discover the strength and weaknesses and leverage my background from banking and from my prior, Bell operation finance days, looking at, okay, I have a general sense of like what good means or what the investors look for. So then I want to make sure that I drive the company that I'm working with to make sure that we're in the higher quadrant of those. And to figure out what the gap is and then, close the gap from there. So we don't always have perfect information. That's kind of the fun part about it. But being able to kind of commit and then iterate along the way is a really fun process for me.
A couple of questions for you. Now, when you went from Bell Canada to Credit Suisse, I also know you got an MBA sort of around that time as well. And is that how you kind of repositioned yourself inside investment banking using that MBA and that exposure, or no, it didn't?
Yeah. So the way it happened, actually, that's kind of like my first pivot, which is when I was at Bell. I mentioned, the Bell was a huge, telecom, and at the time, the industry is actually going through a LBO boom, so leverage buyout. So you might recall there's a lot of large companies that are going through 50 plus billion deals with a number of PE private equity consortiums. So Bell was actually in talk to do a 52 billion deal with a bunch of PEs. So I got to get involved from a pretty minor role at the time on the finance diligence work, which then at the time I was thinking, oh, I really want to do more of these type of work. Maybe one day I'll be on the other side of the table. So that kind of piqued my interest to think about trying to switch to banking, and I leverage MBA to get into banking. So I went to B school, and then I was able to switch to banking in New York at Credit Suisse.
And as you mentioned, I think 6 years at Credit Suisse. When you do come out, was it? And again, you just explained to us how you kind of got interested in investment banking. Was it always going to be a stop for you because you knew you'd be returning to the corporate environment, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I was actually, I would definitely say that I keep my eyes open along the way because at Bell, it was literally the first 4 years after college. So, I learned a lot, but I also want to make sure that, I see what else path are for me. But I would say the LBO diligence process with Bell during that time, even though the deal actually fell through, it accelerated my thinking and the action to try to take the time to do an MBA and come back to the US and then do the pivot from there. So that was more of a catalyst for me to have higher conviction to do banking. The banking, it was actually also a very nerve-wracking time going into banking. And I can kind of mention some of that because
you're entering at the absolute worst. You're entering when so many of the finance leaders we speak to are exiting. And
I went in around 2008, 2009, it was the last financial crisis. So, it was the smallest incoming associate class at the bank, probably across the street. So I like to think that they're maybe more selective that way. So from there, though, I think Credit Suisse at the time was one of the most well capitalized banks there on the street. Obviously, if you follow the news, I'm sure you do. The company is very different. The fortune has changed, but I did learn a lot, from my time there, and it was good to have from a really small incoming class. It helps us to kind of build strong relationships from a lot of people that I work with really closely, because what happened was you have a really small incoming class, but then the activity picked up after a couple years. So then everybody just gets so much staffing. There's not enough people to pick up the work that came in really fast. So we just get a lot more, I guess, deal exposure, but that also means that we're working a lot.
So I think when you come back into industry, your eyes are looking towards the CFO office. 4 years or so, you find yourself in a CFO position. Am I right about that, or?
Yeah, that was the other pivot, I would say, going from banking in New York to Seattle, and then I basically faced the dilemma in 2014. My wife wanted to move back to Seattle to be closer to the family. So I guess behind all these things, the true advice, right, is that you always stick with the boss lady in the family. So I wanted to be supportive. So I decided to move, with her, even though I did not have anything lined up in Seattle. I didn't really live here before. So for me, I know that I had to reposition myself to figure out a different path in a different market. So Seattle, the way I kind of looked at it back then is that it's a strong tech hub for because of the presence from Microsoft and Amazon locally. So the startup scene was actually very dynamic. But it's not a traditional finance market where I came from, New York, and doing banking. So it's got to be some kind of pivot to go into CFO path. So I was able to get good advice from people even back at Credit Suisse on like, hey, how do you navigate this, and these other people you can talk to. So the process was not straightforward, I would say, because people with my background probably go in, like move to Seattle and try to look for corp dev roles because they can kind of like hit the ground running, and that's a more kind of typical track. I took a slightly different approach where I just took my time. I go around and in the area, I meet with as many people as I can locally. So, like private equities in the Seattle market, venture capital firms, family offices. We do have Bill Gates and Paul Allen as their like large offices there. So I met with people in that area, and also investment banks, also startups and founders. I love kind of just connecting with them. I would go to these like meetups in Seattle where you just kind of see just different people trying to, they will pitch you ideas. They actually go on stage and pitch like their startup ideas. So I actually was able to actually meet a lot of people that way. And I felt more plugged in a really short time when I moved to Seattle. So that was really helpful for me, even though it was pretty anxious time because I didn't really have anything lined up, but it was a good kind of a restart for me. And then from there, I was able to get recommendation from a local VC that connected me with one of their portfolio companies, SkyTap. So they were trying to look for someone with my background and try to raise a round of funds and have longer aspiration to maybe go IPO at some time. So I was able to come in as the number two to the CFO. So really kind of hit the ground and just take on a generalist finance role and just learn under the CFO at the time to kind of get me ready for the CFO path.
I find that period when you first move out there and you're trying to determine, consider different opportunities and find your door of entry, like an interesting time that many finance leaders might relate to. But the fact that you're in a new geography too, it's kind of exciting. It's kind of like the possibilities are all in front of you. But I wonder whether you're really open to possibilities at this place in time, or is your mindset sort of locked in on a CFO path?
Um, no, not a like a predetermined or like a high conviction path per se. I was definitely talking to local, VCs and PEs. It's just trying to make sure, like, is there a path for me? Does that make sense for that time or longer term? Like, do I have the flexibility to maybe navigate through a different type of role? And I felt that in that market. Um, it might actually make a lot of sense to come out from New York and join those. But sometimes it's all about like being in the right place at the right time. So even though conversations were happening, I was also talking to like startups and talking to other companies or other founders. So I think at the time I felt if I really want to pursue the CFO path, being able to work under a seasoned CFO as a number two and really learn, and then I think that will get me the bridge that I need to go from banking to scaling fast growing startups in a tech space within Seattle, which I think will have pretty good long term impact. So that's kind of the path that I took. But to your point, there's a lot of kind of open conversations that were happening at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. But did you find sort of a CFO mentor?
Yeah. No, I was really fortunate actually. One of the key value I would say coming out of SkyTap was that I had a great relationship with my CFO and also my team. So many of them they're close friends with me in the local space. So yeah, I'm really fortunate to have that. So during that time, we were I expanded my responsibility from the finance generalist to take over accounting and then sales ops, pricing, commercial strategy, because we have a unique position with partnership with IBM and Microsoft. So allow me to kind of look at a lot more of a larger scale partnership agreements and all those commercial arrangements. So, and then during that time, we also raised a round of Series E at 45 million with Goldman Sachs. So all those, experience and also the relationship that I built helped me, set up to take a first shot at the CFO role a few years later.
Yeah. Okay. You're right there then. You step into your first CFO role after you exit SkyTap, where, again, you just described you had an opportunity to learn all the aspects of finance, perhaps, that you hadn't been all that familiar with before, it sounds like. And then you join Customer.io in 2021. So it looks like the COVID transition team was at work for you. A lot of CFOs changed jobs during COVID. But let's find out about this company where you're today's CFO, Customer.io. Tell us about it. What does it do? What are its offerings about?
Oh yeah, sure. So I'm CFO at this company for about 2 years now. So Customer.io is a customer engagement platform. We're designed to power communication that people want to receive. So think of us like we have two main products. The first one is called Journey, which is a workflow messaging automation. So we allow our customers to engage with their users through email, in-app messaging, push notifications, SMS, and web posts. So all the mediums that you want. And then we also recently launched our second product called the Data Pipeline. It's basically a customer data platform that allows you to connect data to everything in your tech stack. So we're super excited about that. We want to be the single source of truth for your customer records. So our platform is differentiated in a way that we handle millions of events per day, and then we were able to create workflows that you design to run your campaigns and see your ROIs. So let's see what else there. We are fully remote. I would say the other thing that is pretty unique about the company is that we have a very diverse customer base. We have about like 5,000 customers across, a lot of different maturity stages. So we like to, work with early stage companies and have them kind of like get on board it and be really passionate about our product. And then we grow with them. So some of the company had been with us for a long time and they were like small startups, but then they became really successful and now they're like our large customers. So we do see that flywheel working with us really well.
And it was within 6 months, I think, of you joining the company that there was a capital raise. Is that right? Can you share with us a little bit about the history of the capital structure? Was that I think that was the first raise. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did a Series A round. It's not a traditional Series A when you compare other like startups. We call it a Series A because prior to that, the company was pretty much bootstrap. So, and this is the first time we took institutional money, even though we are at a much bigger scale compared to other like Series A companies. But yeah, we within the first few months, actually, I joined the company. We started talking to the company. Always get a lot of inbound interest anyways. So we started talking to different funds, Spectrum, which is our a partner that raised funds with us. They really want to be a part of the story. They're great to work with. So I think we really had a good relationship through the conversation with them. So I think we were very fortunate. The timing worked out really well, where we were able to raise a round of fund for a rainy day before the market start getting a little bit more volatile. So like when we closed the deal, it was Q1 of 2022 before some of the things like start going sideways. But I would say it gave us a good advantage because the company was not trying to raise a fund, to raise a round. We were just trying to operate, but we were growing 75-80% at the time, and the fundamental was really great. So I think with that strong inbound interest, we just took advantage of it. And Spectrum has been a great partner with us, since we raced around. So,
can I ask? Was it we like to usually ask, was it a recruiter or was it a relationship that you had? How did you find the office there?
Oh, at Customer.io. Yeah. So it was through a recruiter that I have in prior conversation talked to, and we kept in touch. So he reached out to me, and then he kind of talked about like the growth story at Customer.io, and he said, "Hey, no matter what, I think you should just talk to the founder CEO." And I really enjoy kind of talking and working with founders. So I was like, yeah, I'll take the call, and I think it'll be great. So I talked to Colin, the founder CEO, and learned more about the story. I was really impressed with the team and the company fundamentals. And then I joined them 2 years ago.
The company was pretty small when you joined, and I think if you look on average, most companies might not bring a CFO until they're a little larger than this one was, maybe twice the size of this one. Same thing with CFOs. They might be saying, I'm not ready, or you're not ready for me yet. I think my set of skills lie in your future.
Yeah, so I think I actually really enjoy coming in a company where they're kind of like at a inflection point of growth. So at Customer.io, I was the first CFO of the company. And then my last company at MedBridge, I was also the first CFO at the company as well. So usually you come in and the company it's depending on the stage, but both companies were not super small. Like they were about 20 million, 25 ARR. So it's getting to the next phase of growth where you want to get from 25 to 50, 80, 100, and where you want someone that can come in and be a strategic partner that's leading in the front line alongside the CEO to really kind of figure out the talk track of like what is the growth story, how do we scale the company, what are some of the systems and peoples that we can kind of like put together. So and I really love that, and I can leverage a lot of the prior company experience as well as the banking experience to navigate that process, because when your company is growing from say 20 to the journey to like 100 million from 20, there are so many strategic initiatives that you can think about, like whether it's just raising rounds of funding, or you can do M&A. You can think about IPO readiness. There are a lot of strategic things you can do, and I can kind of bring in a lot of different perspective, while also trying to make sure we can scale the company and have a longer term strategy. So that's what I enjoy, and then that's kind of I think it worked for MedBridge and for Customer.io. That interest is there's a mutual interest for that, and it resonates with them in terms of the skill sets.
Are there also sort of key decisions that you get to make given you're arriving in sort of an early stage of the company in terms of how the finance function's going to be sort of architected or governed? You can avoid certain mistakes maybe, or you can be a little more hands-on.
Yeah, for sure. It's usually you come in. I'll look at like three things, right? Like people, and then metrics, and then systems, infrastructures. So like as a first CFO, usually you come in, if you look at the people side, there are not a lot of finance accounting resources. For example, when I came into Customer.io, there were two people on the team, like one controller and then one finance person, and that's it. Which in itself is amazing, because for a 25 million ARR company, fully remote with like so many different countries, two people can manage all that. It speaks to the power of a really clean SaaS company. But me coming in, just looking at, okay, how do we scale, the infrastructure? How do we, enable and elevate the people that we already have, like these two people? So we build out more accounting functions, finance accounting, data analytics. We also added legal and IT. So my responsibility, covers those areas plus billing. And also, obviously, strategic initiatives like fundraising and M&As and things like that. So, to your point, you get to have a lot more control on a lot of the operations strategic areas, and as an extension to that, you also have influence on the other functions in terms of the roadmap, for example, or also the strategy, and kind of working alongside with the CEO. You got a front row seat. That's what I'm excited about.
What about how the technology team interact with finance? Was that something you had to sort of establish as well? And again, I'm thinking of data, I'm thinking of visibility, I'm thinking of the controller who was there, a year before you arrived, didn't have necessarily the role that would ordinarily connect with technology or the technology leadership, I guess. Or, can you describe the rapport you've tried to establish with the technology leadership?
Yeah, so it's for Customer.io, we have a pretty close executive team, and so that made things a lot easier. So myself and the CTO, we have a pretty good relationship. And then what I try to do is, from a system technology perspective, I will have the control on the data warehouse, metrics, standardization of reporting and compliance, all those things. So I have obvious strong opinions on those things, but I partner with our CTO and our Chief Product Officer as well, because a lot of these things, the company being a product-led company, we do have a lot of these technology built into our platform. So we want to make sure, we are kind of working alongside, in sync on the new changes. So in some ways, it's good to kind of get it start early on, so that we don't have to later on like deal with a lot of the legacy issues, and then refactor a bunch of the stuff. And don't get me wrong, we still have those too. Every company does, but it's good to kind of get in early and try to establish those.
Yeah. So just in terms of when we think of resource allocation and the types of conversations you might have, someone who wants to invest in a product, or it's going to cost us this much, you wanting greater visibility to understand better how that money is being spent and why this particular product perhaps did it more cost efficiently. And if I'm describing something that's not relevant or just not the nature of your business, just let me know. Yeah. But what I'd love to understand better is, what did you ask that chief technology officer for? Could I just have a little more visibility into this? And if we could just produce these numbers to educate your people weekly instead of quarterly or monthly or whatever it was, perhaps we could modify their behaviors in some way. I'm looking for an instance where you collaborate it with technology to achieve greater visibility so you could educate the organization. How am I doing? Is this your world or not really?
It is, yeah, yeah. The good thing is that I do wear a lot of hats. So all of the above that you mentioned, it actually do apply. So like one good example I would say is so we being a cloud company, we use Google Cloud. They do our hosting. So obviously it's a big expense from a finance perspective that we manage. But it's basically owned and controlled and operated by the engineering team. So we look at it very closely together. So I, from my perspective, I work with the Google partner. We look at the pricing. We look at any long term partnership relationship or arrangement to get more favorable terms. But at the same time, I work with the CTO very closely, and then their team on the site reliability side to look at how are we allocating the resources. Are any of the new initiatives driving usage to the expectation that we have, or is there some other things that change? Like most recently, actually, we discover there's new pricing change from Google, which then we were able to spot it right away and talk about what's going on with this increase here. And then we were able to determine, hey, given the new pricing that they put on us, we will reconfigure, these, the way we do storage and taking snapshots in a more efficient way, and then we can bring down the cost, as a result of that. So it's a constant kind of like exchange of information so that we can get the optimized cost structure.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that. That's interesting to see the collaboration as you described it. Just wondering if there's a business dynamic that you could share with us that you feel you've begun to measure more effectively during your tenure. Maybe you arrived in, these numbers where you'd see them every once in a while, but suddenly it occurred to you that you needed to see them more often, or you needed to educate some part of the organization about them so they could likewise watch them more closely. I don't know. Is there a business dynamic or something that you've seen?
Yeah, we're spending a lot of time right now on a more comprehensive view of pipeline. So this is a fresh in my mind where oftentimes when you have a fast growing company, you probably don't have very consistent data, or it's because you just recently migrated your CRM from close.io to Salesforce, for example, or you changed the sales team. So the stages and definitions are different. So we were actually in similar situation where we have data, but it's hard to actually look at it on a consistent basis and then try to do good analytics on it. So how do we kind of look at it and figure out progression of the pipeline? What is the coverage and what is the aging? Are we truing up the different probabilities like at each month of the snapshot and figure out how mature they are? So because what we want to get to is the increased visibility of if we go into a quarter with this X amount of pipeline, we should know, given historical coverage and certain progression, conversions, we should know that we are going to be at this range of closed bookings. So we want to get to that. And historically, it's hit or miss. So we definitely want to get better by looking at the pipeline and start to really have, finance team, the data team, sales and marketing, that kind of look at it consistently. And then the other benefit to that also is that it also goes upstream, where you drive accountability on the marketing lead gen side. So if we say we need X dollar of pipeline, you actually need to do certain things 3 months ago to do a campaign to generate these leads that flows through to drive these pipeline, which then will close. So I think there's a lot more kind of visibility and accountability that we can get from there. But we're not perfect in it, but it's definitely something that I'm trying to drive and get more visibility.
It would seem many finance leaders have begun to more closely examine how their organizations are leveraging AI and whether there are areas they might be lagging in terms of costs and time savings, as well as the strategic benefits of it. Has your team, the finance team, undergone an AI reality check recently in terms of cost savings or benefits that AI might offer?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of AI. I'm bullish, and the company I would say generally is very adaptive to new technology. So I personally believe that it will be a game changer for to unlock a lot of the productivity. So I would say, like from a maybe I'll give you two examples. Like from a company wide scale, we actually dedicated one or two headcounts that will actually focus on this full time to then train the AI to look at our internal resources because we're fully remote. So every documentation, everything is actually stored in the cloud and our own company data. So we can train it so that employees can focus on more creative tasks instead of trying to spend time asking for, oh, what is the PTO policy? Or like, oh, what is the handbook about these things? Or like, what is our support best practice? I think we can get that through a AI assistant. The other thing on a department more specific on my team relates to finance and legal. Finance, I think it's going to be a really good beneficiary from the AI because it can basically do data gathering, benchmarking, and it can format and normalize things in a more consistent manner. At least get the first cut to get you to like maybe 70%, and then my team can come in and apply the business judgment and add value to it. And then the legal thing I'm really excited about is, every company out there, we get security questionnaires, we get RFPs from all kinds of different portals, different formats. Same questions were asked like different ways, right? But AI is going to come in and try to consolidate this, understand it, interpret the answer, the questions, and then apply like probably 75% of the way, like some of the standard questions. It's a huge improvement that I'm definitely pushing for. And those are two that directly within my control or influence to try to push out.
So Z, we always have what we like to refer to as a finance strategic moment, where we ask finance leaders to just share one moment of strategic insight that they experienced along the way in their careers. We know you've had 3 of these already today, but we do ask just for one. It might have happened 20 years ago, and it might have happened, well, today. Anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, I think back to my early days in fresh out of college, working at Bell Canada. At the time, being like a 22-year-old, you just try to pick up as much as you can and try to do analysis and do all that, which is great. But one advice that I got from a pretty senior person at the company at the time was that it really changed my approach to my career early on. What he said was, Z, just slow down and just learn the business. So I love the simplicity of it because from that moment, I was able to basically take a step back and really appreciate that beyond the financial metrics, like beyond the cash flow, there is the people flow. Like how does decision get made within the organization between the people? How about system flows? Like what is the ecosystem of tools and processes involved? Are they in sync? What is this information flow? How do we have decision and feedback up and down the organization? So those are like things that I start thinking about in early on, and I was fortunate to be able to kind of give that advice because those things are in some way much more complex because they're just organic in nature versus more of the financial pieces. So it had a big impact on me, and I try to take that with me and always make the investment early on when I come into a new situation to learn about a business and then use the financial background as a tool to facilitate strategic and operation conversations.
From episode 881, this is Keith Taylor, CFO of Equinix.
Everybody thinks cash is good, but when you're an investor, cash is a stranded asset that generates sub acceptable returns. But I've kept more liquidity in our on our balance sheet and access to it, because I think, despite at times it feeling good, it also feels bad. Inflation feels like it's still going to be there, so interest rates are going to be higher for longer, and so you have these pops. You have the challenges of economic downturns, and so I think, number one, having the flexibility around liquidity is going to be really important. And eventually things will turn. Nothing lasts forever.
We're going to move to the mentoring round. We're speaking with Z Lee, CFO of Customer.io. Z, we always like to once more have you look back and think about your first 60 days in a CFO role. This would have been your role, but just prior, you had a CFO tour of duty to Customer.io. That first 60 days that you were in the role, and again, we're looking for advice for newbie finance leaders. What would you tell yourself if you could go back in time and just give yourself a piece of advice? You knew quite a bit, but as you got into the job, there must have been something you wish someone had told you. You can go back now in time and tell yourself that. What would that be?
Yeah, I would say don't hesitate to deliver the bad news. In fact, always be prepared. Think about the downside and proactively manage the communication to your team. The CEO, the board. When you first take on you have a first shot as a CFO. It's natural that you want to focus on the positive. You want to prove yourself, and then you might just take more time to figure out the negatives. So what I learned was that when you take ownership about any negative news or mistakes, you be transparent about it. You take ownership about fixing it, and you communicate it as early as possible. Well, you can gain a lot more credibility that way. So yeah, always be prepared for a downside case. And as a CFO, as you kind of grow through, especially on a fast-growing company, it's very important to think through the downside. Just as important, it's as important to think through the downside as it is to articulate the upside.
Z, we always like to ask our guests to reflect a little bit on the personal side for us. There's something about you in general that most people don't know?
Yeah, so outside of work and 2 kids, I am every year I spend time do the alumni interview for University of Pennsylvania. So I'm passionate about that. It's probably 10 plus years I've been doing it. I found it super inspiring and also humbling to see new generation of kids coming in and trying to apply and the ability that they have compared to when I was applying. I think it's pretty amazing.
So I see you sitting in a Seattle Starbucks with a young potential University of Pennsylvania student. Is that no? I mean, what exactly does it enter? Is that what it is? Doing cursory front end interviews?
Yeah, and then exactly. So as you could actually do either in person or remote now. In the past it was exactly at a Starbucks, or they will come to my office or something, and then they'll and we'll do conversations. But as the part of the admission process, in addition to their normal applications and essays and everything and the test scores, we will try to bring in a more kind of a personal side approach for the students to always get paired up with a alumni. And then we'll spend time kind of sharing our experience at Penn, and then just let them ask any questions. So I found that really, it's very refreshing every year that you see the candidates and then the question they ask, and also their credential and the quality that they come in. So, but yeah, it could be, now I do half on the phone, half in person. So
it's a great way to give back, and at the same time, it connects you with your university community as well. One would think. I don't know if the mentors get together annually, but they probably know. They have their mentors and they know they can invite them to special functions, or no? Is it?
Yeah, it's pretty organic. So there is a community for Seattle, for example. All the alumni interviewers, like we do have contacts, and sometimes we do like summer events or like get together. But also in terms of the students, sometimes I'll get email that they got accepted, or they also got multiple offers. They want to talk through like, hey, like should I go here or there? And then I try to be a more objective resource for them as well to kind of like think through their options. And those are always fun too. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Wondering if you have a book selection for us. Doesn't have to be a business book, just anything that's influenced you along the way or you thought were fun to read.
Yeah. There's one book that I really like. It's about negotiation. It's called Never Split the Difference. So as a finance person, I think you're always dealing with some kind of negotiation every day, whether it's with clients or your employees or vendors. So the book actually took a very thoughtful approach, and it actually emphasizes the art of listening. So it kind of helps you think about the importance of like framing the context and listen to what really matters for them and develop the empathy, which honestly I think I'm terrible at it, like in terms of like empathy. So I'm working on that, but it's a good call out where in terms of like negotiation, there's more listening. The person that's listening is more in control than the person that's talking. So hopefully, I can develop more win-win situations down the road.
See, we're up to our final question. Thank you for offering us some thoughtful answers all along the way here. We're wondering about your priorities as a CFO over the next 12 months. What come to mind?
Yeah, so at Customer.io, we have some really exciting new products and initiatives coming out in the next 12 to 18 months. So we're definitely focused on how do we strategically allocate resources to really fund the growth and the bets that we're making to continue to drive and accelerate our trajectory. That's one. And then the other thing that I'm also trying to foster, organizationally is having the team to think about timely and relevant insights instead of like waiting for perfect information. Just have more timely information and inform that for decision making, and just reiterate from there. We don't need to wait till 100% perfect when the timing is no longer relevant for us. And then lastly, it's just like I always think recruiting is a big piece for CFO. So always out there trying to represent the company.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons
Z Lee, thank you for joining us
strategic
on
insight
CFO Thought Leader,
shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the number one thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.